Ever since this crisis erupted in Iraq, we've been treated to pearls of wisdom from the same people who brought us the bloody and expensive debacle that was the Iraq War. They're all over cable news and the Sunday talk shows.
This is more than just an obscure Shia-Sunni conflict. This is al-Qaeda.
It's a disaster, unfortunately made possible, or certainly made more likely, by our ridiculous and total withdrawal from Iraq.
We need air power immediately to stop the advance toward Baghdad.
If we learn anything, you can't fire missiles and then turn around and come home.
Now, I'm not in favor of sending combat forces into Iraq at the moment, but I can well imagine that we would have to have some troops on the ground.
Those insights aren't enough. You can learn more from the architects of the war at a seminar this fall hosted by the conservative Hertog Foundation. Who wouldn't want to take a study in decision-making with Paul Wolfowitz and Louis Scooter Libby, the man who leaked Valerie Plame's identity? But there were two key voices we had not yet heard going into the weekend. The two people who were probably most responsible for getting us into that war. A semi-obscure painter in Texas by the name of George W. Bush, and the man known to many of his former henchman, Tony Blair. Well, this weekend, one of those two men broke their silence on the Iraq crisis for the first time. Tony Blair posted a lengthy essay on his website refuting the idea the war in Iraq may have had, I don't know, maybe a little something to do with the current situation in that country. Spoiler alert, the essay basically goes like this.
Here's a spot.
She speaks.
Out. Damn spot out, I say. Will these hands ne'er be clean?
Okay, so it wasn't exactly the Lady Macbeth monologue, but Blair did say, quote, we have to liberate ourselves, use that word, liberate ourselves from the notion that we have caused this. We haven't. We can argue as to whether our policies at points have helped or not, and whether action or inaction is the best policy. There's a lot to be said on both sides. But the fundamental cause of the crisis lies within the region, not outside it. That prompted Boris Johnson, the Conservative mayor of London, who actually voted for the war, to respond in a way that should truly be a model for politicians here in the U.S.
I can understand that he feels very, very shattered and guilty about the whole thing, but I think my general message would be just to put a sock in it, really, and in a paper bag on head time.
Paper bag on head time. It should be paper bag on head time for everyone who got it wrong on the Iraq War, especially the ones who think we can basically do the same thing all over again and expect different results. So tonight we are going to talk to someone who actually got it right on Iraq, someone who told the truth and stood by it. Joining me now, Congressman Gregory Meeks, Democrat from New York. He's a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee and voted against going to war in Iraq in 2002. Congressman Meeks, good to see you.
Good being with you, Chris.
Well, I guess my first question to you is your reaction to the announcement from the White House tonight about 275 military personnel moving into Iraq to provide security for embassy personnel.
Well, as long as it's for security of the personnel, so that if we have to move them out quickly, we'll have the personnel there to get them out to safety and move them. It's a day-by-day, I'm sure. They're monitoring the situation on a day-by-day, hour-by-hour basis. So we want to make sure that our personnel is protected, and if we have to get them out, they have to be there. But no troops on the ground, as the president has said. We don't need to, we've been there, done that in the incorrect way. It won't do anything to help us long term, but to protect our interests and our personnel, we have to do what we have to do to make sure that that is taken care of.
As someone who lived through the first part of this debate in 2002 and 2003 and the run-up to the war, who voted against the war, what is your reaction as you watch this unfold in Iraq, both the real human tragedy that's happening there, and also the political discussion here in which people who were the architects of that war are opining about what we should do?
Well, I'm amazed. I'm amazed because it seems as though they got it wrong the first time. They don't want to acknowledge they got it wrong the first time, and they're saying do the same thing. And the same thing is to go into Iraq without any forethought or any understanding what the culture is, what the people is, and what's actually happening on the ground, and just go in and bomb. It reminded me that people have forgotten already that a few days after the ill-advised and what I voted against Iraq war, we had President George W. Bush on a carrier saying mission accomplished. Like that was it. And that shows that they didn't know what the heck they were talking about.
Right. Do you sense the mood in Washington right now on the Capitol is different than it was in 2002? It strikes me that it is. It strikes me the appetite for intervention is low, and the voices that we're hearing from the early part of the last decade who called for it don't represent necessarily the congressional mainstream right now.
I can tell you on the Democratic side, that's absolutely true. Even some members who voted for the war now say that was the one vote that they regret most in Congress. So they don't want to make that same mistake again. They are concerned about what's taking place on the ground. They look at it as a sectarian war that is taking place now, and it's a Shiite Sunni adventure, and so therefore just going in and engaging and bombing without any end result or knowing what an end game is, as what they did in 2002, is not something that's tolerable to them. Unfortunately, what I'm hearing from some of my Republican colleagues, as you've noted on the Sunday shows, they don't seem to have learned the lesson of 2002.
Can I ask you a personal question?
Yes.
Is your office getting called to come on television to talk about Iraq?
My office getting called.
I mean, are people saying, people saying Iraq's in the news? You know who we should talk to? We should talk to Congressman Gregory Meeks.
But they are calling saying, don't go to war. You got it right the first time.
Your constituents
That's right. My constituents are giving me calls.
But you are not getting, there are not bookers knocking on the door of Congressman Gregory Meeks to say, you know, here was someone who took a tough vote. Let's remember, that was a tough vote in 2002. There's lots of people who voted the wrong way, who took a tough vote, who was right about this 12 years ago. Maybe he should come on TV and talk.
Which amazes me why each and every time they go right to John McCain. And I don't know when John McCain has had it right. You know, thank God the American people were smart enough not to elect him president of the United States, because we would be in war almost in every place around the continent right now. Yeah. So why does the news media go to John McCain to ask him anytime there's anything happening, because you know he's going to go to war. You know, send troops. It just doesn't make sense. And I would like to hear the other individuals, because there's plenty on the Hill who have a contrary view. They should be interviewed and asked about which way to go, because they did get it right. And I think they're looking at it in a broader scope, as the president is doing right now.
Democratic Congressman Gregory Meeks of New York, thank you, sir.
Good being with you, Chris.
All right, coming up, a surprise twist in the ruling that struck down teacher tenure laws in California. It tells you everything you need to know about the battle over education and education reform. I will tell you what it is next.